Yeah, Keith, don't worry. Ever since I went back to 2012, 2013, where, like I said, my son did a government with Harrison, and then he did a government with Cooper High School, I decided that the things that he was doing, which I was in turn doing because I was, helping him get through his homework at that time, um, affected my train of thought. So I always think about the political survey and then the um, survey about the how do you feel when you see this, and then you used age groups and shit like that, and then from that you deduced that I was a Republican and that I associate with this group of people and I don't associate with that group of people. So then I thought of Q-Bear saying they were going to shrink my circle, him and Dr. Mahmoud from KMOJ, where I thought of the community investigation where they had stolen the utility funds and they were now not giving the black community utility funds because they put them on a budget, Keith. And then I thought as the city of Minneapolis put the people on a budget, they were now doing redistricting. As they were doing redistricting, they got an illegal seizure of people's phones, and through the illegal tap warrant, because everybody's guilty because you black, they now started looking at a window through you and then GPSing you and then grouping you up and then under my mind assigning the COVID label, where now we were under siege by the government, where Tim Walz implemented a curfew for grown people because he said there was a germ out here that if you sneezed, you coughed, you would give to people that would kill you, and then you had people dying all around you. I think Estes Funeral Chapel had at least 1,000 motherfucking burials, I bet, which gave them funds under COVID, which for me was under Joe Biden, where I thought that him and Tim Walz agreed that, we were due $7.7 billion from the COVID that Joe Biden was supposed to pay to the city of Minneapolis, because under that political platform where they were now, grassrooting votes, which meant that through your phone and the jobs that you had, the lifestyle that you, even going to your local liquor store, just going to your local liquor store, you now have a history where people that work at the liquor store can now your name because they get your ID, and then they can now talk about you in a community where I thought Bobby Joe Champion created this community online situation where you do what Bobby Joe Champion says or else. You can't go against Bobby Joe Champion, which brought me to the Cosa Nova Act. That's going against the government, right? Bobby, Keith, Dawn is the government. You can't go against them because they're judging you as the pillars of the black community with their wives and children, and now they're saying this is the local standard. And then they created an underclass of them and an underclass and an underclass, and they began to weed out people and redistrict them according to how I thought that you went through Bobby Joe Champion's community. Thus, people getting a job for 6 to 8 months and then being promoted real quick. I thought the funds, like my son got some funds from something, and then he had to pay this debt off to the college in order to get back into college. And I said, Michael, you don't owe that debt. He said, yeah, I do, Mom. I said, no, Mike, you don't owe that debt. And he said, Mom, I'm gonna pay it off. And I said, okay, I'm gonna let you pay it off because you got the money. But I'm telling you, as your mother, I don't think you owe that debt, because that was when I was suing North Hennepin Community College, Hennepin Technical College, because they were doing some manipulation of 3 files. I said that under the ideology of the transition portion of the lawsuit, under the ideology of the housing situation of the lawsuit, and under transportation, where Amy Jane Getz was bargaining these things as a Social Security special education attorney, had violated your rights. And I thought that if she was communicating with you and your father in any way, shape, or form, she was violating our rights. And I said that to Mike Sr. in the beginning. I said, please tell on her if she is. You have the right to tell me anything, because at the time when you and Robin was together, not together. And then you said, I'm leaving Schoolway and I'm going to go work for Minneapolis District Number 1. Nate Junior's friend got me a job, and you need to call up child support and say that I got this job over here at Minneapolis District Number 1 because I'm not at Schoolway no more. And then Schoolway was bought out. I thought that was all under Keith and Kim Ellison using the school district funds, where they've been manipulating shit where Bobby Joe Champion, Keith Ellison, like I said, this is some deep shit, ain't it? Some deep shit. And because only Bobby, Keith, Dawn, Dr. Mahmoud, Dr. Garrett, I bet wanted me to be a hoe. He wants me to suck his dick, don't he, Keith? Dr. Garrett, you know, I was coming in his office too pretty. I didn't take his advice as a man. He wanted me to put my son on a corner in too small clothes because he was having issues at Lincoln. And as he was having issues at Lincoln, he didn't want to discuss the admin transfers and things that they were doing, which hindered things. And he didn't want to discuss a natural way that the other doctors had discussed with Michael and his supposed ADD, ADHD. And I thought, you know, under the ideology, these are just natural things. When people get mad at you, it would seem like their attention span would now affect them, because they're mad, so they might shut down, and that's a deficit, a disorder, right? And then they might have this need to get up, move around. That's hyperactivity. So I thought people just in general could have that, right? This ADHD. It's something that the medical field under mental health created. And then with that, I thought they were now trying to deem this whole area EBD, right? Based on the reform of the welfare department. Under Keith and Kim and them, the reform of the welfare department, I thought you now had 5 years to get a job, right? And if within that 5 years you didn't get a job and you were using your child, you were saying your child this, your child that, you don't have this, you don't have that, then we had to figure it out. So like daycare was something simple. If you were working with the welfare department, they gave you daycare to look for a job, so you needed to remove that from the situation. And if you still used that, then they just figured you didn't want to work, right? You would get a job and then something would happen in the daycare, between the school and the daycare. Now your kid's at home and you're at home, so they just deemed you to be EBD, and they rolled your shit over to Social Security supplemental income, which gave you a little bit of more money, but in theory you're no longer on welfare. The Department of Human Services is not paying for the Social Security Department is. And that takes away from people's Social Security, who they kept saying, well, your Social Security funds are going to deplete. And then they said some shit like, Sharon, even though the federal government said you're due $1,350, Minnesota said that under our Social Security, you didn't pay enough into our Social Security system. And I said, well, what's the debt? They said, excuse me? I said, well, you're saying that the government said that I'm due $1,350 under the theory that I was paying Social Security supplemental income insurance, the jobs that I had, and they were paying according to the scale that you gave them. They didn't say that there was a scale for the federal government and a scale for the city government, state government. They never said that. Had they said that, they might have been able to take that out, but they didn't say that. They just said there was one that they took out, which was for the federal government. Federal government said, Sharon, you're due $1,350 if you become disabled in this year. Well, I wasn't disabled in 2003. I was disabled in 2004, and then in 2005 they legally certified me disabled under the diagnosis that they were giving me, that I had disc degeneration based on a car crash. And as my discs were degenerating because I had the seatbelt on and the impact of the car, which hit the concrete, and we popped up and I went back down, they said, did you black out, Sharon? I said, yeah, for a couple of seconds. They said, how do you know? I said, well, because I remember hitting the wall, popping up. I don't remember coming down. What I do remember is the white guy saying, are you okay? And I'm saying, yeah, I'm okay. My airbag didn't deploy. The transmission was almost touching my leg. That's what my ex said. He said, Sharon, that's your transmission. That almost touched you. I said, yeah, by the grace of God, I got out that car. But that's where I became disabled. And then I had Joseph Kaminsky remove it from my record. I said, because I'm black, I'm poor, I live in a low-income area, we already got high car insurance. I said, this is going to make my car insurance go up, and it's not even my fault. So you had to remove that from my record in my head. But then Social Security never had access because they never said, Sharon, how do you consider yourself disabled? Although I told them, I kept listing the car accident. I kept showing them the records from the car accident that listed the car accident. However, since Joseph Kaminsky removed it from the record, they needed to get that report directly from me. And nobody ever asked me. Amy Jane Getz didn't even ask me for that fucking report. Like, Sharon, do you have a report? And then I had a functionality report where they sent me to a Social Security appointment where they had it set up like the tiered jobs. Your jobs are tiered based on the demand of the job. Being a production, manufacturer, retail worker is not the same as being a clerical admin, and that's not the same as being a CEO. With each step of life, your demands might become less and less, and with the creation of technology, lawyers and doctors and things don't even have large files anymore. They got like a laptop, and they've tried to slim them down as much as possible so that the weight, doesn't affect them, and they've got access to records on the go. So, it was supposed to simplify things for a lot of people, which the creation, like I said, in a sense did, if you were lucky and people uploaded all the records they had. Otherwise, they were supposed to archive them, take care of them in a manner. And then the question becomes, how long do you need the records? Like medical records, you would think you would need for life. If somebody said, well, this is what this doctor said, and they found this, and then I've just lived with it for years, and all these other doctors refuse to acknowledge it, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It means that without the record, when Barack Obama tried to discontinue those records, you would have a history. Barack Obama tried to discontinue your records as a nigga. I'm telling you, that motherfucker didn't like black people. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I said Oprah Winfrey was prejudiced, Barack Obama was prejudiced. If you just read the shit that I did, I said going back to Jesse Ventura, all them motherfuckers, this has been a Social Security fight for years. For years. And I said, Keith Ellison, you did me a disservice by trying to call me EBD when I was in high school. And if I was due the title of the girl who got no Child Left Behind, because I did summer school. I thought Miss Creasy and Miss Black just didn't like me and put me out of Henry for that. And because I didn't need to go back, I just never went back. Right? So don't play me about how many credits a motherfucker did or didn't get. It's about the education and the test you could pass.